Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
Your life.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mel V, coming to you live from Conscious Consumer Network headquarters here in the Netherlands. The time locally is 8 p.m., making it 7 p.m. British Summer Time. So a good welcome to you wherever you may be on this planet. It's been an interesting few weeks and so much has been going on. And tonight is an episode of Open Disclosure where we have the great pleasure of speaking to Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson, two people who I've had the great privilege and pleasure of meeting and working with previously in 2012 at the Breakthrough Energy Movement Conference here in Holland. So it's great to have them with us again. So hello to you both. Thanks for being with us.
Well, hello. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for inviting us.
Indeed, it's been an interesting few years since we last met up, and I just wanted to say that we've watched a major shift go on in the world of alternative media, interesting sifting of the wheat from the chaff. And one of the things I must commend the two of you on is having always managed to stay in integrity with the way you deal with the accessing and dissemination of your information. One of the things people get very sick of hearing me say all the time is, show me the evidence. And I actually feel like I've got this thing tattooed to my forehead, show me the evidence. So much stuff come across my desk. And one of the things I've always enjoyed about both of you is the work that you put out is very evidence-focused. Of course, Andrew, you've got a website, checktheevidence.com. And Dr. Judy, you've got Where Did the Towers Go, the book, and the website, which is wheredidthetowersgo.com, and of course your personal drjudywood.com website, which details all your information and has a full catalog and expose of various things that have to do with 9/11. So I'm not going to ramble on too much longer. I really want to get straight into this because I was having a look at your website, Where Did the Towers Go? And there's just something I want to open with a quote from the opening page. And it says this, sadly, this book is a summary of the physical evidence submitted in my federal qui tam case accusing the defendants of science fraud. Now, this is where you started, this is how you actually came into the investigation of 9/11. I want to start there a bit. Tell us a bit about how you came to be on this particular journey, disseminating this information.
Well, I started on, day one where what I saw on TV was not what they were telling us to see on TV. And for me, when the two disagree, I just tune out my ears and look at with my eyes what I'm seeing. And I saw a building frothing up into dust in midair. And my colleagues around me were just sucked right into what they're being told to see. And that just boggled my mind. Like, what is going on here? Why this discrepancy? And the more I learned about this, the more I saw that discrepancy, that people seem to believe what they're told over what they see. And that it becomes a big problem because that's how you operate magic shows. You get people to assume the wrong problem. You get them to assume what problem they're solving rather than solving what is right in front of them. And so, I assumed that the grown-ups were going to take care of this. You're going to have a government agency looking into this. They're going to deal with it. I have my work to do. Have a teaching job, research, and so forth. And as time went on, well, in the year 2000, there was this presidential selection that went belly up, and they said, well, we can't fix this one, but we'll fix the next one. The 2004. In the 2004 event, the exact same thing happened, even worse. At 1:35 in the morning, the votes flipped. And, you're not supposed to ask questions. Okay, obviously the grown-ups aren't going to take care of this. If they said that they're going to fix it and they didn't fix it, it's or however they said, what they mean by fix, then, whose job is it to fix this stuff?
Yeah.
It's our job. It's our world, our country, our world, our sanity. And that's what really got me going. And, I told my mom I was going to do this, and she said, well, if you do that, you won't have a career. And I said, if I don't, no one will have one. And I still think that's true to this day. So I started gathering the evidence together because, how else do you solve a problem but look at evidence? And I had a bunch of evidence together on my website, and a lawyer came on my website and went, wow, this is evidence that's admissible in court. And so I submitted a request for correction to NIST. That's the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, and notifying them of the error in their report, and that they're contractors. You can't sue a government agency, but you can point out the fraud in their contractors, because that's U.S. tax dollars, my tax dollars. And so I filed that, and that qualified me as a whistleblower, because I alerted them to this problem, and I was the first to alert them to this problem too, which is another requirement. There has to be fraud, and you have to be the first. I think there's no question I was the first, and NIST even admitted there was fraud. And so in a way I go, and that's how I came to file the KETAM case, which is a whistleblower case. And where that came to, well, the judge in the lower court said he wasn't going to hear a case about who shot JFK and what landed on the moon, amongst other things. And excuse me, sir, did you read what we submitted? That isn't what this case is about. And so we appealed it to the next level, and the Court of Appeals, and there are 3 judges there, and they're actually very respectful. They acknowledge that the law applied, that I'm talking about here, applied to this case, but to dismiss the case, they're ignoring the law. I think that's pretty respectful. You can say, what they're doing is not right, but they were respectful of me in saying that. They didn't have to say that. So that was good. There's no way they could refuse the case or refute it, because I showed fraud, and I was the first one to point it out. So.
Well done, and thank you very much for doing so. I must say your evidence has provided much fascination to me, and possibly, as we've always said, and I've said to Andrew recently, your version of what happened, Where Did the Towers Go, the book, possibly the only physical version of events or what actually happened that I would say get behind, because it's the only thing that makes sense to me out of everything else that I've been told.
There's a word you used. You said it's about version, your version of events.
I know that's a terrible wording, and my apology. Yours, it's not a version. Yours is categorically based on fact. This is something I do want to get into here, because
Right.
You've actually got written here some very interesting law text about this, about what defines something as truth and untruth. One of the things that you categorically stated is that this is not a case of belief. It says so on your website. This is a crime that should be solved by forensic study of evidence. And before it can be determined who did it, it must first be determined what was done and how it was done. The order of crime solving is to determine what happened first, then how it was done, or then who did it, and then why it was done. For example, the motive. And that is possibly the most logical way I've come across anybody going about assessing a case and information. And I just want to say thank you very much, Dr. Judy. You're absolutely right. To prove something as empirical fact, not as a version of events, that is the format you need to follow. And it's wonderful for you that you've broken it down and put it out there like that. Could you please just elaborate on that a bit more?
Yes, and there are people who say, well, we don't need to find out how it was done. We need to go after who did it. We're going to go arrest somebody. Okay, what are we going to arrest them for? What crime did they commit? You have to determine what happened before you can say who did it. What was it that they got done? And I have a concise slide here.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find it. Let's see. All right, there it is. Now, do I hold it up? Yeah, I think I started up before I hit
Yeah. Share screen.
there. Okay. And there's share screen, and there it is.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, it's a Casey Anthony case. And for those who aren't familiar with it, and this is an example of this, of why you got to first figure out what happened. They charged her with murdering her child, but the prosecution hadn't solved the case yet. They hadn't determined what happened. They're trying to claim who did it before they determined what happened. Instead, it's based on assumptions and opinions and speculations, and try to get people to assume, get this, public opinion going. And the greatest part of this is that the jury knew this. They knew that you can't solve a crime based on assumptions because those aren't facts. You have to have it based on facts. And ABC News interviewed one of the jurors the next day, and the jurors said not guilty. Now, not guilty doesn't mean innocent necessarily. It just means they can't prove what the crime was. You can't. Can you convict somebody of a crime if you don't know what it is? And the ABC News interviewed one of the jurors, Jennifer Ford, who said it beautifully. And I've got a little clip of that. And the guy was trying to railroad her. See if you need my audio.
Why? Why did you and the other jurors acquit Casey Anthony of murdering her daughter?
There wasn't enough evidence. There wasn't anything strong enough to say exactly. I don't think anyone in America could tell us exactly how she died. If you put even just the 12 jurors in one room with a piece of paper, write down how Kaylee died, nobody knows. We'd all be guessing. We have no idea.
So it's cause of death that was a problem?
How can you punish someone for something if you don't know what they did?
The prosecution wasn't able to give you a solid enough picture of how
Do you see that picture? I have no idea what it like. They didn't even paint a picture for me to consider.
You're the people who said you only deliberated 10 or 11 hours, and that shows you weren't serious. That you didn't really look at the evidence. It's a 31-day trial or whatever it was, 33-day trial. They say you must not have looked at the evidence.
That's speculation, and you know what? Speculation is not fact. We had a lot of discussions. We started to look through stuff, but none of it. How did she die? If you're going to charge someone with murder, don't you have to know how they killed someone or why they might have killed someone or have something where, when, why, how? Those are important questions that were not answered.
I hope you could hear that okay.
Yes, very well put. The body of the crime. I think they have a Latin term for this, corpus delicti. You have to know exactly what happened. You can't charge someone with murder if you don't know what actually happened to that person.
Yeah, did they murder him?
Did they murder them? Where's the gun? Where's the evidence? Where's the bullet hole? It's all got to be there in order to prove that it's murder.
So those who are, training the truthers to think we got to go after who did it. Who cares how it happened? It's just that's a witch hunt.
Yeah,
that's not a any kind of crime solving.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very interesting case that you've put across here because it touches on so many things that we're currently seeing at the moment. So this is very good tools for everybody out there who's watching in terms of learning how to discern and how to go about approaching this kind of information.
I'd like to follow it with one more.
Sure.
Remember this guy holding up a nugget of petrified bubble gum he found under a park bench, or who knows what? We can't see what it is. And then there's this guy on the right holding up a test tube of powder in front of the UN. Now, he's saying that somebody has weapons of mass destruction, but how do you know that's what he has? If he has evidence or not? I mean, is he holding the UN hostage? What happens if he drops the test tube? No, it's a prop, and it's encouraging assumptions. They're encouraging you to assume a problem, not one that's in evidence. You know, that nugget that's in Stephen Jones's hand, he later came to say it was new and improved mini micro nanothermite, you know, which you couldn't see, you know, with your eyes. You know, this thing he has in his hand is a nugget of something. And so it's just a prop, but the purpose behind it is to cause you subconsciously to just assume there's proof.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
And you don't see the evidence yourself. You don't have the testing yourself. And it's you can logically look at it. Why is this guy on C-SPAN holding up a nugget of something, or why is this, you know, Colin Powell in front of the UN holding up a test tube of something? You know, would you go around with weapons of mass destruction in your bare hands, you know, dangling in front of the UN? But few people would stop to realize that, and oh yeah, we got to go get them. We got to go bomb Iraq because they must have weapons of mass destruction. It convinced people. And it's all about encouraging assumptions rather than, you know, starting at the beginning. What can you show? You know, are the towers still there or are they gone? Well, I was there beforehand and touched the towers, and there afterwards they're not there. So yes, the towers are gone. I personally have established that. And then each little bit of evidence you establish. You don't jump to a conclusion of this is what did it before you determine what it was, because then you don't collect the data, all of the data that could come up with a totally different conclusion.
Yes. Very good point. Is there another slide after this one?
Oh, there's quite a few.
Yes, keep going.
Well,
About 200.
What? Oh, yeah, it's funny. I could start with this one at the, let's see, I have to restart to get back.
While we're doing that, I just wanted to put a caveat in there to say, Andrew, just remind us again, what is that you initially connected with Dr. Judy's information? You've been such a champion for it, and you've done such a great job in promoting this particular bundle of information. How is it you sort of came to be doing this for yourself?
Well, it was because I'd already started to investigate 9/11. I was later to the game than Dr. Wood was, of course, and I've told this story many times, but it was around about 2004 that I became suspicious that we'd been not been told the truth. But then I was, to cut a long story short, I fell into the disinfo cruise camp, and that character that was shown on the left of the slide that Dr. Judy had put up a few minutes ago with the Stephen E. Jones character, it was him that I first got involved with this scholars group, Scholars for 9/11 Truth. And that had come about because I was working for the Open University in the UK, and I still do. I've worked for the OU for 12 years now, and I still do. And because I had that connection to the academic, environment, not in the way that Dr. Wood had. It was a much more low level than that, really, on a part-time basis. That's essentially how I ended up involved with the Scholars Group. And I fell in with that crew. Then I realized that Jones's story about thermite was fishy, and this talk of all these different types of nanothermite and all this was just another cover story, basically. And I stumbled across this article that had been written by Dr. Wood and Morgan Reynolds, where they were talking about this and what was wrong with the thermite scenario. And it is wrong and always will be wrong and always has been wrong. It's not a position other than a completely incorrect one that needs no discussion after you've established that it is wrong. It's a bit like when you mark a sum, 2 + 2 = 5. You know that that's wrong just by looking at it, but you wouldn't know that until you've been taught basic arithmetic at the age of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, or whatever the age you care to get taught that at. Same with the thermite thing. You establish that is wrong, and then you have to move on. You don't continue to debate it, as people still are debating it 10 years, 11 years after this bogus theory was first put out there, And that essentially, it was another chap called Frank Ferguson, who suggested that Dr. Judy and I talk. That was sometime in 2006. I think it was probably late 2006. I think, I can't remember the exact date. And I realised that what was being done was a cover-up. There was another cover-up going on, which not many people knew about. And in 2007, I started to write about it because I was just trying to set the record straight of what had been going on, because I knew that what was being put on these forums and stuff at the time was wrong. I knew that from speaking to Dr. Wood and other people. I knew that that was wrong, and they were putting out wrong information. So I thought, hang on, you're not doing that. This is what actually happened, and here's why. And I started to record things, because MP3 is your friend, as I often say, and you can record everything now with no cost. You get a 2 terabyte hard drive for 80 quid, and you can record half a lifetime of audio on that if you really want to, if you put it in the right bit rate and so forth. And I knew all about all that stuff. I knew how to do all of that, and I knew how to do websites and do DVDs and stuff. So it was no problem. And so that's what I did.
I think it was the Greg Jenkins ambush thing that really got things going.
It was, yes, indeed, and indeed, again, people still will quote that. There'll be you'll see, and you see this every forum. Go onto a gardening forum, or a cooking forum, and post something about Dr. Wood's research. Oh, I've come across this really interesting website about 9/11, on a cooking forum, and why don't people have a look? And within probably 24 hours, you'll get a bunch of trolls on there trying to stamp out the fire. And 9 times out of 10, this person who made this website's an idiot because this guy did an interview with her in 2007, and he shows that she's an idiot.
An idiot for saying that most of the building turned to dust in midair.
Right. And he gets away with this through, eye rolls and certain NLP techniques, or NLP-like techniques, neuro-linguistic programming.
And Stephen Jones also recruited him to write pieces.
Yeah. And exactly, and this is the backstory, that unless you do the legwork and the brain work, you won't find out. If you just accept that link to that Jenkins video as being a valid, thing, and you don't actually know the background to it, which is what I found out from talking personally to Dr. Wood, and I knew this Fetzer character, I knew about him already, and it turns out that he almost certainly set that up. Yet Fetzer was allegedly a friend, of this research, and so it goes. And that story has been ongoing really since then, since 2007. That's 9 years of the similar types of techniques. But I think
Jenkins, Stephen Jones recruited Greg Jenkins to write hit pieces to debunk laser beams from outer space. Well, I'm not talking about laser beams from outer space, but it made people believe that's what I was talking about, and that I had been debunked.
That's it. And I've got another clip of Jones from an event, I think in 2008 or something, where he makes this statement, this calculation made by Greg Jenkins repudiates the beam hypothesis. He actually says that, and he talks about energy. And I thought, well, that's a meaningless statement, because it's not to do with the beam. Dr. Wood's research, not in its entirety, that's only part of it. That's mentioned in one part of it. And it's not a hypothesis. So whatever calculation Greg Jenkins did doesn't apply to what's on Dr. Judy's website and what's in the book, because it's not about a beam and it's not a hypothesis. So Jones was basically lying again, and misrepresenting things.
It's kind of making a jump in things for a simple explanation or simple example, parallel example. Think of a microwave oven. If somebody was talking about this thing that cooks food, and then Stephen Jones comes out and says she claims that food can be cooked without any heat whatsoever from some space alien laser beams from space.
Mm.
It's just the equivalent. If that had come out nobody would be buying microwave ovens for decades, later.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the other thing that comes up, which I don't think you talked about this slide you've got up now, did you? But I think it's worth mentioning what that's about. It looks like a very simplistic picture that you've put up there, but maybe you want to explain why you put that, and then I'd like to add something as well.
Yeah, this little fella here, I don't know, he's about 2 or so. He's had Kool-Aid before, so he's an expert. He knows what yellow liquid tastes like. And so he's an expert, but he doesn't know enough to know that he doesn't know. What the words on the side say, down here it says toxic. This is probably antifreeze or something like that. But he believes he's an expert with yellow fluid because he's had yellow fluid before. So he knows that all yellow fluid is good to consume. And the same with people who believe that an opinion and an internet connection make them an expert at anything. They can Google something, or I understand they also use Facebook. That actually people are starting to not even think. They're just, do searches to find the answer to a question rather than think of what the answer is.
Yeah, and what I wanted to add to that really was that Dr. Wood is a former professor, so she's worked for decades, literally, in her field of expertise in materials engineering and related areas of that. So she has this expertise, but as you were saying a minute ago, because you can go and search for anything in an instant, and clearly whatever you find which contradicts something on your website is automatically right, and you are wrong, because what you are showing to people is deeply, deeply troubling. And so what I wanted to point out is that the way that the academic community works is through grants and funding, which is...
I can get to that slide if you'd like.
Yeah, you can sort of go forward to that if you want. But I mean, and just while you're getting that, I wanted to point out that I also work for a university, but the university, because I work part-time, they have almost no clue that I'm, speaking on these sorts of programs and stuff. And, it's just got nothing to do with what I do for the university, because I just teach, or tutor rather. It's not even really teaching, I'd call it more tutoring, in IT subjects, in sort of various IT-related subjects. And it's at a fairly low level, as I say. I don't actually have a lot of student contact, certainly not on a daily basis, because it's all distance learning. But nevertheless, I do have experience in my field. I do know how a computer works. I know how a central processing unit works. I know the difference between ROM and RAM and all these kinds of things. And I know the difference between C++, Java, an interpreted language, a compiled language, and so forth. So I do have expertise, and this has been built up, as in the previous slide. It's the value of experience. We have that experience, but when you try and convey this to people and point this out, they just can sometimes take you the wrong way, and they think that you're being arrogant.
Once computer code's the same as all the rest. I know Fortran, so therefore everything is just like Fortran.
Even that, or they've done a bit of HTML, so they think that they know everything there is to know about how a web server works and stuff like that. So the point is that outside of the academic community, where you've got, shall we say, less disciplined minds, if I can call it that, less disciplined and less critical thinking, because once you get into higher education, once you get out of school, once you get out of college, the goal is to stimulate higher order thinking, things like dealing with abstract concepts, so that you can think of a concept and then abstract that to another scenario. But most of the people that are doing that in the academic community have that thinking tied up in a particular focus, like physics or biology or genetics or something, and they very rarely will go outside of that. And if they start to challenge the paradigm, as we all well know in this conversation, and probably most of the listeners, you at some point will come up against a scenario where you're going to lose your job.
Or they have a lack of confidence in themselves, so that if the consensus has a different opinion than they have, or different observation,
Yes.
They back down and assume that they're wrong. It's very controlling. That's what this picture is about. Is which bird knows why they're taking off and where they're going.
Exactly.
They just run with the flock, and there's an advantage to not doing that. I don't know if I should play the audio. This one,
Yeah, if it
this
works.
Neil Kramer was being interviewed by Mel Fabregas, and I never had spoken or even knew of Neil Kramer before, but he'd studied my presentations, and this is one of the comments he made.
So yes, she has the letters after her name. She has spent the time in the academic edifice. Of course she has. She's been soaked in that. And yeah, that woman is absolutely independent. You can see it. Everything she does, the way she looks, the way she sits, the way she talks, the way she, her mannerisms, everything. She's just a completely fiercely autonomous force. She's a nightmare for the control system. Yes. That woman.
And that's true. You can't, if somebody will step outside of the consensus order, the consensus control, that's a problem. And you see why it's been such a problem to the truthers.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
And what I've talked about is the introduction of an anatomy of a PSYOP. Why did people miss what happened on 9/11? They missed it. It's because they don't understand evidence-based problem solving. It's a totally different paradigm from what they are taught. And it will give totally different results. Don't you think it's been weaponized? This herd control?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So you need to learn how to listen and observe carefully. And then you can solve problems in the world, not just regurgitate, a list of talking points. Now, I use 9/11 just to facilitate this. I'm not all about 9/11. It's just that's a good focus for this, because what happened in 9/11 is known. Why don't people know it?
What I'd like to add is that, as you've sort of probably realised, Mel, that we've also kind of had the help of Richard D. Hall. He's kind of come into the picture, a couple of years after I did, and he's been doing his own thing with 9/11 research as well in a slightly different area, which is the plane analysis work, the plane flight analysis, Flight 175 primarily. And he too is an engineer, so we all have an engineering background, and engineering is a problem-solving mentality, and that is why I think we've, because we have had to solve problems. We've taken this thinking, applied it to 9/11 in our own ways. I've done it in certain logistical ways of actually, setting up websites and things like that, and things like that, and working out how the cover-up works, because I've had to see how this cover-up is actually working, and take an engineering sort of approach to it. How has this been engineered? And the cover-up has been engineered. And if you look and observe, as Dr. Wood has got on the slide there, you listen and observe, and you do this over a period of months and years, not just a couple of web searches, you do it literally over months and years, you can begin to see what is going on and how it's actually working. And that is why I think we've all ended up working together, because we've both got the same way of looking at this. We've got experience in an engineering discipline, we've got experience of solving problems and experience of doing analysis. And this is I think why, we've taken this approach.
And, people were talking about the 15-year anniversary. They're celebrating 15 years of a cover-up. That's the scariest part. But what happened on 9/11 is known. It's just been covered up. So, we need new investigation. We need this, we need that. Well, just sit there and, say the sky's falling.
Yeah, exactly. And, this is one of the problems that we're getting to a point where it's passing into history. I did a talk at a small group a couple of weeks ago, and I said, this is over a quarter of my lifetime ago that it happened now. So that shows you how successful the cover-up has been.
But it helps to be able to dissect it, because you come to see just how easy it is to control an entire population of the planet. Here's another example I like to use is Lance Armstrong, the doping scandal. The truth was known, it just kept covered up all this time. Here's this guy who comes back from cancer. He wins 7 Tour de France straight. Along the way, he also won the World Championships. And here he is in year 2000, going up Mount Ventoux. It's over a mile high. And here's one of the best climbers in the world, Marco Pantani, struggling to stay on Lance Armstrong's wheel. Climbed up this mountain. Here's Lance Armstrong with his earpiece talking to the team car. Not breathing hard. And a British journalist noticed this, went, whoa, wait, what's going on here? David Walsh, and something is not right. And this is in 2000. And there's this wonderful little video clip from a documentary about it. And I've clipped out some pieces, and it's hard to understand places, but what David Walsh says, there was a train here and it was dripping with gravy. And these guys are desperate to mop up as much as they could for themselves.
27 seconds faster than Balear. You're 40 seconds faster than typical. Boys, come on. Keep the team together. We're going to win it.
There was a train here, and it was dripping with gravy.
Here they are, the blue train.
And these guys were desperate to mop up as much as they could for themselves, because the financial rewards were huge.
Okay. This is the best team in the world right now.
All the peloton are on Armstrong's side. The sponsors are on Armstrong's side. The UCI are on Armstrong's side. Everybody had a stake in Lance being a success. And of course, anybody who accused him was deemed an enemy of the sport.
London sports writer David Walsh accuses Armstrong of doping in the book LA Confidential.
I'll say one thing about the book, and especially since our esteemed author is here. In my view, I think extraordinary accusations must be followed up with extraordinary proof. And they have not come up with extraordinary proof.
Why couldn't it just be proof that allegations must be followed up by proof? And what Lance was saying is that when you're an icon who sits as high in the firmament as I do, you're going to have extraordinary proof to bring me down.
Now apply that to 9/11 or whatever. I have extraordinary proof in my book, but if somebody doesn't look at it, they can say, oh, you have no proof. That's just your opinion. That's just your perspective or whatever terminology, or your theory, unproved theory. That's a fun one to do. But also what is said here, and this is kind of creepy, is it's set up that way so that, like the momentum has been drawn to, this is the official story, and you can't rock that boat no matter what evidence you have. And what I'd like to show after that, okay, with Armstrong's fraud, look at all the beneficiaries, and I add to that the sponsors of the Tour de France, USA Cycling, Armstrong's Livestrong Foundation, his cancer foundation, ka-ching, ka-ching, here the cash registers go. And NBC Sports, who televised it. They all know what's going on, but it brings in the bucks. It's all about popularity and the bottom line. Now, this is what we're getting to on this about the beneficiaries with 9/11. Yeah, war, everybody talks about that. But near and dear to my heart is about the university professors, the research funding. You can fund all sorts of graduate students, and you move up the ladder with becoming a full professor and really are looked up to because you bring in lots of dollars, lots of research dollars. You can't do all that research yourself. You have graduate students. You graduated lots of graduate students. That makes you really important, makes the university important. And everybody likes that. Okay, the graduate students develop fly and spy gizmos, airport security gizmos, street surveillance cameras, you name it. And do you think any of those professors are going to look at a building turned to dust and want to say, yo, that's not a collapse? You know, airport security isn't going to stop that from happening. No, there goes their dollars down the drain. They won't even look at that. They're looking at, you know, ka-ching, you know, there's where they get funding for. And of course, the alternative media, the same thing. Well, let's have a debate. Let's debate on if 2 + 2 is really equal to 4. And
they can't put their mouth where the money is.
Yeah, that's true. And everything is because of 9/11. 9/11 changed the world. No, 9/11 gave people permission to change the world. That is the key there. But and also this was.
There was a
Whoops,
train,
oh yeah.
and it was dripping with gravy.
As reminded, same with academia, but with the Eisenhower video here, part of his farewell address, that few people realize. They remember talking about the military-industrial complex, but I just am so shocked that he's right on the money in 1961 of what happened.
The Free University, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity.
And that's what it is. So many people say, well, you know, if it really wasn't the way we were told, you know, all sorts of university professors would have spoken up. You're saying they're in on it? Not necessarily, but they're taught to have tunnel vision for whatever the request for proposals is for.
I think, you know, that brings us on to the point of building a consensus, you know, and this has happened with the climate change issue. Oh, we need to build a consensus, and once the consensus has been built, you know, then you can take the action based on the consensus and not what's actually true. And it's the same, that same methodology is used to work the cover-up. Or we'll build a consensus that it was bombs in the building, you know, and then we'll steer the truth movement, quote unquote, on that consensus basis.
And so, you know, another thing I'd like to clarify, you know, the subtitle of my book is The Evidence of Directed Free Energy Technology on 9/11. Most folks don't know what evidence means. It's not theory. Evidence. It's evidence of this. I'm not stating that a space laser was used to destroy the buildings. And in a similar way, you know, evidence of nuclear power plants was seen on August 6, 1945. Nuclear power plants did not destroy Hiroshima, but it was evidence of a technology that existed that could power nuclear power plants, that would allow that to occur. So it was evidence of nuclear power plants. And the same reasoning, you know, evidence of directed free energy technology on 9/11. Not saying, you know, what the gizmo was. And so this is often misquoted to say, oh, but she means laser beams from space. Yeah, it's just stressing it, looking at the evidence. Empirical evidence is the truth that theory must mimic. You know, evidence is not a theory, it's not speculation, it's not a hypothesis, a thesis, an attitude, an opinion, an idea. It's the artifact that the truth left behind. And that's an important thing for people to realize. Most high school students, I think, wouldn't know the difference between a theory and an evidence. These are just words that they hear thrown around.
And that's we something else Dr. Wood and I have talked about is this Common Core thing in the States, and we have the national curriculum in the UK, and there's some evidence, if I can use that word again, that they're trying to actually blur together these terms. And you know, there was even a question on a basic maths exam where student had to estimate the answer. But if they put in an exact answer which was correct, they'd mark it wrong because they said, "Oh, you haven't estimated it," you know. So this was one of the issues, you know.
This particular sequence is probably one of the biggest keys that should be taught in school. The discipline. This takes discipline. You know, what is it? You say how it happened. And who did it? If you haven't defined what it is, this is the easiest way to run a cover-up. If you haven't defined what it is and you skip that step, then people have to imagine the problem. So they're solving an imaginary problem, not a real problem. You can never, ever solve the real problem if you're solving an imaginary problem. You don't know what happened. And so you get the truther movement arguing, was it nukes, was it thermite, and back and forth, back and forth. They're not solving the problem. They're just, arguing about whose imagination is better about what it was instead of looking at the evidence. And they say if let's see if I can go backwards a slide. Oh, that's a different slide I had there.
There's a list that you can go to and you can choose the slide that you want if you know which number it is.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'll try that next time. Yeah, the statement 9/11 is an inside job. How long were we, given that from the truthers? We need to go arrest somebody. Okay. What are you going to arrest them for? If you take somebody to court, I used to say if you take somebody to court for shooting somebody to death, you better have a dead body with a bullet hole in it. And that Casey Anthony trial really showed that issue quite well. Let's see, this number 17. So I can, is it right clicking here or?
And then you go to slide.
Go to slide, and that's number 17. Yeah. So what I'm talking about is destructive mechanism. What caused the building to start coming apart? And after you look at the evidence enough, okay, you have a selection of different kinds of energy. Thermal energy would cause the building to evaporate. Kinetic energy, pulverize. And then something I define as directed energy. The energy is instructed to do something differently than it normally does. And in this case, it's instructed to the bonds of atoms are instructed to repel each other instead of be attracted to each other. It's like you just reverse the polarization of it, however that's done, and the material all comes apart. Solid material turns into powder. And that powder is very small, like the atomic level. It was about 1/100th of the size of red blood cells, or about the size of DNA. And so people were inhaling it. They couldn't have a filter that fine. They're inhaling parts of the building. So of course they're going to have all sorts of cancers and whatnot. That's not surprising. But it's important to, look at the destructive mechanism. So starting out with thermite, it was thermite. What was thermite? What's the destructive mechanism caused by thermite? Thermal energy? Well, it was a building cooked to death. The survivors of Stairway B didn't think so. You can say it was bombs. Well, a lot of things, bombs caused the ground to shake too. Didn't happen. But kinetic energy, also from a gravity collapse, something goes bangity, bangity, bang, and that didn't happen. The guys in Stairway B weren't crushed. The building wasn't beaten to death, nor was it cooked to death. It came apart from something else that happened to it. And so this isn't an argument about was it this weapon or that weapon. No, I'm talking about destructive mechanism, and not particularly favorite weapons. Like, you know, looking at this picture. You see steel falling. Why is it trailing so much dust? That's a lot of dust. Just think about it. You know, if you want to impersonate this beam and you're going to jump off the roof, you cover yourself in dust, and you know, on the way down, the guy on the ground looks up and he's not going to see any dust coming off you. That's minuscule. Okay, so you carry a couple of bags of flour and heave them out on the way down. No, you can't replicate that kind of picture that way. This has to be the material sort of like frothing up and effervescing into dust. And then you look at the intersection that it should be landing in, and you find, you know, just dust on the ground, no steel beams. And you also find that there's no appropriate seismic signal that would, you know, for buildings slamming to the ground. So, shall I continue? That's well, yeah, I remind people of what was there.
I mean, it's, you know, one of the things I was going to say is that you just have to look at this and you can see that the alternative, you know, destructive mechanisms that haven't even been properly described don't, as you said, that it's not thermal energy and it's not, you know, mechanical energy. It's something else.
These guys are, you know, just this little yellow corner is about all that's left except for these few columns here. These guys are standing here. How hot can it be? They weren't cooked to death. This picture was taken on 9/11. And people survived, there's 14 people who survived inside this little corner piece of that building. If everything collapsed down on top of it, why weren't they crushed? Why'd they look up and see blue sky? And if there was all this crushing going on, why are these columns straight like soldiers? You know, and where's the material? So you can easily rule out anything that, any kind of mechanisms that uses thermal energy, which also rules out laser beams from outer space, because a laser would cause a destructive mechanism of thermal energy. It'd be cooking the material. And that isn't what happened. So this tells us something else is going on here. And this is where I define what I mean by directed energy. You know, somebody has the ability to direct energy in such a way as to disrupt the atomic bonds of matter. They give that instruction somehow. You know, think of another example is you have a piece of iron between some magnets. There's some instruction in there to pull the magnet one way or the other. You know, you don't see anything touching it, but there's a field effect that puts a force on it that you don't see. But there's some kind of, you know, energy is being directed in some way to cause this building to do what it did. It did it, so we know that such a technology exists that can do what got done. And so I'm calling it directed energy, you know, to control or direct where it goes and what it does. And I think you'd have to say it's pretty well controlled. You know, it didn't go across the street, and we know it exists. Everybody saw it. They just were told they saw something else. That's, you know, like Colin Powell in his test tube. But this also, the implications are that free energy exists. And as Andrew has commented, that probably is what needs to be covered up more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, the theme that it's the cover-up of technology. They've got to cover up. They've got to stop people from understanding that this is real. That's the theme. If I was to summarize it in a sentence as to what the cover-up is mostly about, that's it.
Why did so few people see it? Kind of touched on that before, problem-solving skills. And they're getting worse with this Common Core business. You know, in groupthink, the flock of birds. And they're terrified of implications. So you have to have discipline to not think of the implications, because that might cause you to not want to conclude with what is logically the evidence is showing you. You just have to be looking at it without any agenda, just looking at what the evidence is telling you. So you forget about all these things. You have to start with solving the problem. And that's my favorite question. The answer is 27. No, it was thermite. Am I right? It was 27. But, you know, what's the question? You have to first establish what problem you're solving before you can say if the answer is right or not. And so to argue if it's thermite, it was thermite, it was bombs in the building, it was nukes, okay, what's the problem you're solving? And that doesn't get dealt with much. So I just emphasize again that what happened, that's where it's at. And actually, when you finally determine what happened, if you have enough evidence to see what happened, the rest kind of comes out. You know how it happened or well enough. And also, as for who, Andrew might differ a little bit from me on this, but finding out who pushed the button isn't going to stop it from happening again. Because, okay, that operator is in jail. Now you get another one, 10 more lined up to operate the technology. The problem is that technology exists. That's
I don't think I differ that much in terms of, we don't know who did it. And I just think, the only thing that I point out is what you've already done in terms of finding out who knows who did it, which is the company that you and Jerry put into the case, at least some of those companies, one or two of those companies. It would certainly seem to be the case that they, know a lot more than we do.
They're developers and manufacturers of energy weapons. And there's one that had the most number of people on the contract. Also has a ongoing, I think, contract with the U.S. government to know everything about any weapon of mass destruction that exists or is being developed anywhere. So they not only can identify what technology did it, but whose technology. So let's put them under oath. Rather than speculating, and guessing, you got to follow the evidence. They can, they know who has this technology that does this type of thing with this signature.
And I might add at that point, that there is a lot of talk about the groups that might, know more about who did it or which group of people did it. And you hear talk of, it was a Jewish bankers conspiracy, or it was a Zionist, or it was people in Israel. And, as far as I am concerned, that it might have been all of them. It could have been a group of Bilderbergers that got together round a table and then used their contacts in, military industrial complex. But again, going back to what Dr. Wood's got on the slide here, how are you going to prove that? You'd have to, in other words, have minutes of that meeting or a video recording of that meeting where this plot was all hatched. How are you going to get hold of that evidence? How are you going to say, oh, well, Kissinger was there at this meeting and we've got this recording of him saying, well, look, we're going to go to these companies, we're going to use the research that they've been doing on this weapons technology. Has anybody got transcripts of those meetings? Did those meetings take place? Well, we don't know. So it's just guesswork. And the best we can do is come up with some educated guesswork on those topics. Because, I've looked at those things to some extent, but it never becomes as firm as this is, because here we have this vast quantity of evidence. Just to add in at this point as well, some people have said to me, I don't know about to Dr. Judy, but why don't you talk about the Pentagon? Why don't you talk about the planes? Why don't you talk about what happened at Shanksville? Well, the simple answer is the evidence is not as clear cut. You don't have as much evidence. With the World Trade Center destruction, you have the biggest volume of evidence, which gives you the clearest picture of what happened, the top one. That's why,
But after you then understand what happened, you look at the Pentagon evidence, the little bit you have, and you recognize it. You know, you don't
Yes.
have airplane parts on the lawn, and you have this, you know, itty bitty hole in the building that just happened there, and the windows adjacent to it aren't broken. You have, you know, fuming cars, and, you know, you can recognize it, but you wouldn't have come to that if you started there. One thing maybe I'll point out, you know, looking at it logically, is the truthers like to stay away from talking about no planes at the Pentagon. You know, they can't explain how a big airplane could cause just a little, well, actually the thing didn't even cave in for 20 minutes. You know, it was the first thing I saw, Bryant Gumbel is seeing, oh, this is the first images we have of near the Pentagon. It can't be the Pentagon. You know, he's thinking it's near there because he doesn't see any damage, but it was the Pentagon. You could see the little reel of wire or whatever that was, it had some weird fire
You've got
on
that
it.
other slide, haven't you, with the other guy talking about that? Is that the next slide, or with is it Bill, his first name? I forget his second name.
I don't have those. I don't think I have those audio clips on here.
Oh, didn't you not in that one? Because you had them on the other one, didn't you?
Right. Or maybe I don't know where they were. Oh, it's on. I think it's on the.
I might be able to get hold of those actually, because I think I've got them on this computer. So yeah, okay. But there was this guy, the reporter at the Pentagon, and we're not thinking of Jamie McIntyre, because this famous Jamie McIntyre clip where he says, "I don't see any evidence of a plane crash here at the Pentagon."
Right. Also, there's, you know, they don't know if it was a plane, if it was a helicopter that crashed, or if a bomb blew up. I mean, you can't tell the difference between those.
Mm.
But the biggest conclusion I come to about this is, why are the truthers, you know, directed to leave open the possibility that a plane did this? You know, the thermite folks and all, or the bombs and the building types. Well, if they opened up that can of worms to having no plane hitting the building, what are they going to say? That bin Laden, you know, snuck his thermite in the Pentagon? Or put bombs in the Pentagon? You know, that doesn't work. And so they stay away from that one, because it gets them in trouble. Because how do they have, you know, directed energy, some type of direct energy where the wall just comes apart and no material left in it without breaking the windows on the side? It doesn't work, you know, even with the bomb explanations and so forth. But how would they propose bombs got in there or thermite got in there? Yeah, the towers didn't slam to the ground. These are important first details. Just looking at the evidence, not jumping to conclusions. Well, if there's you know, they slammed the ground, you have a pile of stuff left over. And that didn't happen. We'll see that. And Manhattan would have been flooded because it would have ruptured the bathtub wall, and that didn't happen. Yeah, folks obviously, you know, misinterpret that, saying, oh, she says absolutely no damage whatsoever. No, it didn't rupture the bathtub wall. It didn't fail and let in the Hudson River. And the seismic record would have reflected 2 500,000-ton buildings and one 230,000-ton building slamming to the ground, and that didn't happen. You don't have the appropriate seismic signal. No matter what your eyes are telling you, you know, aside from that, you look at, okay, you should have this other data that agrees.
Whatever it was that happened at the Pentagon.
Oh, you got it, Andrew?
Yeah, I've got that clip. Could you hear that?
Yeah, play it again.
I'll try and switch it over, because this is a chap called Bill Plant, is it?
Yeah.
Is that his name? And I thought I'd muted my mic, but obviously I haven't on that one. And he basically, you know,
he was evacuated from the White House. He's trying to explain why.
Yeah. Let me just see if I can.
I love his honesty as a reporter.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to click all the controls here to get it to do what I want. So if I just switch it to, let's see, to that one.
Oops, I didn't hear anything.
But this was in response to damage elsewhere to the New York aircraft incidents and to whatever it was that happened at the Pentagon.
The airplane
Did you hear
incident.
that okay?
Yeah, he didn't say airplanes hit the buildings in New York.
Right. So did that come through okay?
Yes, I heard it.
Very good. Yeah, so I mean that was an example that you know, they didn't know what had happened at the Pentagon. And again, I mentioned the Jamie McIntyre clip. I haven't got that here, but that's more well known. I hadn't heard that Bill Plant one until very.
That one I recorded that day. You know, I'm a data collector, and I recorded that, and I had rabbit ears on my for TV reception, and that's why it's
crackly.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, I mean, looking at these facts as you've got them there, those are the sort of the key ones, aren't they, of things that happened and didn't happen that should have happened if the gravity sort of collapse had been established.
Yeah, there's plenty of other pieces of data. Just a minute.
And this is, you know, going on to this list, some people say, oh, you know, she only talks about photographs and all the photographs are fake. So, you know, you can't rely on what Dr. Wood says. I've heard several people saying this. Oh, all the photos and videos we know are fake, or certainly some of them are fake, so you can't, you know, you can't rely on them. But that's not what, that's, you know, there are other things other than the photographs, even though most of the photographs are genuine as far as I can make out.
My favorite explanation about the fake, you know, photographs of Ground Zero is, you know, okay, it looked like it turned to dust. So you tell me they trucked in all this dust from who knows where, and then turned on these snowblower type things to blow dust all over the place. And what do they do to the buildings? And the guy, you know, watching out his window from across the Hudson and watching his TV set would have seen a difference of the two. And, you know, none of that has occurred. But just think of how ludicrous that is. The buildings went away. How can you make that fake? You know, or you're making fake photographs of the real event, that so the photographs look identical to the real event. Well, then what's the point? You know,
it's crazy, isn't it, for people to say that?
And it agrees with stuff. But these first three things are important, and maybe some people think that they need the thermite thing. Yeah, it's a lack of debris, and this didn't happen. Well, here's just to orient people. You know, you come to work, cross the East River, and you come around, and you know, go past Tower 1, which is called the North Tower, and that's the, you know, northernmost because that's the northern direction. And then you see the South Tower, which is WTC2, and you can tell the difference between the two because WTC1 has that TV antenna sticking out of it. Of course, there's WTC7, and you see that. And you come around, you pass WTC3 there on your way to park in front of Bankers Trust, and you work on the 20th floor. So there's Bankers Trust. You're going to go up to the 20th floor and sit down at your desk and look out the window. So what are you going to see across the street when you look out the window? You know, let's imagine what we might see. Whoops, building went missing. Notice the window is still intact. You see the reflection of the windowsill there. But your office is still intact. How'd that happen? So again, here's the overall image, and you're going to look the other direction over towards WTC4. What do you see there? There's well, that's all that remains of WTC4. The majority of it went missing. The main body is just like not there. You could sweep it up, and again, you see the reflection of the windowsill in the window, so you know the window's still intact. And then you look at all of the material that's just missing. You know, that's again the northern direction. And I highlight the voids. You know, they look cylindrical, but we don't know why they're cylindrical. And this, you know, just so you can focus on the amount of material gone. You know, a hole in the middle of the street. that's empty, and that missing part of building 4. So let's look at this situation again. People have talked about building 7 being said that its demise was announced too early. Well, I don't know how that. I really don't understand how that's proof of anything. Like, why would a BBC reporter be given this top secret information? For what purpose? To make sure it gets announced? Well, if it falls, it's going to get announced. But they announced it early. A lot of things were going on that day. One Liberty Plaza was said to have partially collapsed, and I have a CNN video that says confirmed it's partially collapsed, but it's still intact to this day. So the fact that people announce prematurely doesn't mean much. Now we're going to go down here to be right in front of building 1, the front door, and see what we see there. What's it going to look like ground level? Whoops, where'd the building go? If you had this big bunch of building crashing to the ground, or if it blew up, blows chunks, the chunks still have to fall. Where are they? And the chunks didn't fall on that ambulance. The door might be a little bit, twisted, but the rest doesn't look like it has any signs of being clobbered by any steel beams. And I'd like to point out that they park ambulances at ground level. So this isn't, up on some huge pile. And these few weed checks are stabbed in the street there, but there's not much around them. This is like on 9/11. And I guess you've heard the Peter Jennings talking with George Stephanopoulos at the site.
Stephanopoulos is down in Lower Manhattan today. George, I don't know if you heard a little earlier, we raised this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd, as we look at these areas down below, and the video where the towers used to stand, and where is all the rubble gone? And have you been able to answer, is there any way you can answer that question?
I'm sorry, Peter, I didn't get the question.
Okay, I apologize. Jackie Judd and several other people keep asking us, when you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinski, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
Now, I like to point out that you got to feel for the guy, because he's there to tell the whole world what's going on, and that's the best he can do. He's not there to make a fool of himself. He's doing the best he can do. And you get truthers who have video clips from that day of people saying, oh, there are bombs, or I heard, bombs blowing up, or secondary explosives, as though that's proof. Well, is George Stephanopoulos saying that proof that the building's evaporated? Evaporation requires high heat. It's, unburned paper fluttering around. That's not a sign of high heat. Also, it's not, blinding light from that. So these people are just expressing things the best they can in the world they know. And if you look at it, it looks like, if you didn't have the technical discipline, you might say it evaporated, the building's gone, like where'd it go? And the underground is still there. Many like to say, oh, it fell all down the underground, like that is an explanation that covers everything. That there's 14 people who were in Stairway B that survived, and 2 above them who survived without the building around them surviving. And then also over here, at the other place. Now I've got this video clip. I don't know if we need to play this of, Andrew, should we play this one of one of the guys who is right where that arrow is showing during that time that picture was taken? And
why not?
He looked up and saw blue sky. But the things to pay attention to, he's not describing that he was burned to death. He's not describing he was crushed to death. What he does describe is his helmet started to fly off and he started to get lifted up. Yeah, so you listen to what he's saying. He's described it with the best words he knows. So this is Mickey Cross.
I heard this very, very loud noise above me. It was just a tremendous roar, and it was above, and it sounded like it was coming towards you, and then the wind, a very, very fierce wind, and my heart started lifting me up off the ground, and so that's when I crouched down. The next thing I just crouched down. I got to the corner of the staircase by the railing, and I just got as small as I could possibly get. Because I'm not a big guy to begin with, so fortunately I'm not. So I got, and I literally, well, I guess the best way to describe it, I tried to crawl into my fire helmet. That's what I wanted to do, just to protect myself. And I wasn't sure what was going on. I thought the building might be coming down, and I figured, okay, this could be it, I mean, and I was a little angry. I got, so like, damn it, like, why me? Why, I'm beautiful. I'm going to die in the World Trade Center on a beautiful summer morning. It's like a little denial of disbelief sets in, and so then I started getting hit with stuff. It was just debris was hitting me, and it went dark, and then the next thing was just total silence, nothing, a wind. No noise, no light, nothing. And then I started hearing noises. I started hearing like moaning, and guys were starting to communicate, yell out. These were the guys that I was trapped with. They're calling out, who's there? You guys are right, blah, 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 this kind of thing. And I realized there was other people. I wasn't alone, Because when you're alone in a situation like that, it's like existential isolation. It's like, and then when you find out you're with other people, it makes you feel a lot better. Even though you're in a very bad situation, at least there's other people. But then the strangest thing happened. This beam of sunlight came right in on us, like about 8 inches long, but it was clearly sunlight. It was all dirty and full of debris. It looked like pepper was floating around in it, sort of. But it was sunlight, and I'm like amazed now. It's a 110-story building above us, and I'm looking up at the sun.
How do you explain that? You didn't describe being cooked to death, and there's no building above him. He wasn't, squashed or. If you look at this, I mean, he's right down there, and that whole building went away. It didn't tip over. And Jay Jonas said, I looked and said, guys, there used to be 106 floors above us, and now I'm seeing sunshine. There's nothing above us. That big building doesn't exist. And he later said, these are the biggest office buildings in the world, and I didn't see one desk or one chair or one phone, nothing. Another one described climbing out onto an empty football field. So I think that it's a pretty good demonstration. There's not much debris left. Yeah, there is some. And then in that little thing I had outlined in yellow at one of the earlier slides, it was 14 people who survived in there. And you see all these voids in various places. There was a guy who was right on the edge of this one. He was on the outside edge, and his buddies were on the inside edge, and they're gone. And he's survived. Should have reached out and grabbed him and yanked him over. Now here's this missing part of Building 4. It almost looks like you could take a broom and sweep up what was left. This little corner here, but if Tower 2 fell on it, where's Tower 2? And actually we have images from right below that level. It's just the very, very first floor below street level. And this, kind of answers the question about maybe it all got punched underground. Well, it was punched in a little bit down at the end, and you know where they were because Innovation Luggage and Hallmark cards. But these guys are standing upright. It just looks like, some junk got shaken off the walls, and you get a lot of dust in there, and these droplets dropped out of the ceiling. But that's where they were walking, right there. Now we're going to go a couple of stories below there to the loading docks. And the delivery guys come. They want to know where they are and, you know, locate themselves. So it's painted purple underneath building 5 and then green under building 4. So we're going to look down this way. And so they have to turn or else they're going to hit this wall to come out of the ramp to drive out of the parking garage. There's that green wall down at the end, under building 4, and that's under the part that was missing. You notice there's more dust around than usual, and there's also, you know, some light still on.
Going down to the parking garage. We're in quite deep. These are the first pictures of search crews underneath the World Trade Center, desperately looking for survivors.
What is striking about that, I don't know exactly where they were, but that was not a punched-in parking garage because it wouldn't echo like that. It wasn't a full parking garage either. It had straight, intact walls to echo like that. And then right above that same area where we were underground is this. So you have holes here, and there's stairway B. You can walk straight through at ground level. There's just a few of these pieces of facade left, and that's it. You know, there's some little piece of rubble, but not 210-story buildings worth.
We were able to move 120 dump trucks out of the city last night to give you a sense of the work that was done overnight. So some of the debris has already been removed. More of it is being removed, and it'll be done by barge all throughout the day today.
You act like he's going to clean it up by 5 p.m. or, you know. But, you know, what are they doing hauling out debris when they're looking for survivors? I was wondering if that's when the dirt trucks, you know, came in. But, again, looking at this, you know, if the building slammed to the ground, you should have a lot more stuff there. You know, over 1 million tons of debris. And when they went to rescue those guys in Stairway B, they say, you know, where are you? You know, on the walkie-talkie, Stairway B, 2nd, 3rd, 4th floor. Where are you? North Tower, Stairway B. And he finally says, you know, you could hear they didn't know where we were. And finally I said, my God, aren't you listening? And then they said, where's the North Tower? Yeah, you think somebody was calling from the beyond. There's Stairway B. And this is when they rescued them.
Hundreds more firemen were now arriving at the disaster area. But Captain J. Jonas's Mayday messages were still not getting through. Trapped down in the remains of Stairway B. There was nothing else Jay could do.
We realized we can't get ourselves out. And that's a big mental leap for a fireman to take. Because we're so used to being the people who are going in to rescue someone. Now, the roles are reversed and you realize you're helpless yourself.
But with the survivors buried alive beneath a debris field that extended over 16 acres, it seemed they would need another miracle to save them. It was midday on 9/11, and in the chaos and confusion, Captain J. Jonas's Mayday messages were still not being received. The fireman had no idea there was a pocket of survivors nearby. Then Jay again tries to make radio contact. Unexpectedly, this time his call is picked up. One of the officers coordinating rescue operations is Chief Nick Visconti. He responds to J. Jonas's Mayday call.
I got a radio transmission from Nick Visconti. I heard Operations Post to Ladder 6. Operations Post to Ladder 6. This is Jay, where are you?
Okay, 10-4. North Tower, Stairwell B and boy on the 2nd floor.
but the location Jay gave was unbelievable to them. The North Tower no longer existed. They asked for his location again.
He asked me that a couple times. One time he asked me that. Somebody else got on the radio and said, "Where's the North Tower?" I remember somebody saying that, "Where's the North Tower?" on the radio. And I said, "Oh, shit." I says, it's not good.
You bet. Isn't that amazing? Those guys were all intact. They didn't, I understand they didn't lose anybody from their group, from Ladder 6. And they got out under their own steam. And that's where they were. Now, notice WFC2, you know, it's a 44-story building. That dome here doesn't look dinged up. It doesn't look crushed. The 110-story building across the street fell on it and didn't dent it any. That's remarkable. And then also about Building 7, you see that bare sidewalk over there? That building didn't entirely fall across the street. It left a bare sidewalk. How can that building, quote, collapse and not spill stuff out, you know, completely across the street? There's an image of the before. And there's that bare sidewalk part. And I've been there and inspected the side of the post office building. That's that building. And don't see any, you know, huge cosmetic damages. It doesn't look machine gun fired. Doesn't look like something struck the building. And if that building had bombs in it blowing up, it would have looked machine gun fired over across the street. That didn't happen. You know, there's maybe a scar on it in one or two places where maybe a pickup truck with a pole sticking out the back accidentally backed into it, you know, years ago. But there, other than that, there's no, you know, big damage on it. And another view here, you know, there's that bare part of the sidewalk. How can that building, you know, yeah, it's not bombs in the building. You can't explain how that could. Also, it's like double the size of the world's record of controlled demolition buildings. People say, well, they saw lots of debris from, you know, like this picture. Well, this picture was taken almost the same time, just moments later, and you don't see debris behind there. I'm not saying it was photoshopped, but it doesn't represent what was there. That's clear. Now, maybe it's a telephoto lens that, you know, piled up, you know, buildings and anything. Who knows? Who knows what caused that? And this first picture was taken from that angle, and the other picture was taken from this different angle with Building 7 in the background. And this is all before Building 7 went away, because you can see Building 7 there frothing away. You also notice this water here. A water main was broken. So if you had hot molten metal, why isn't the water boiling? Why aren't the people walking through the water look like boiled chicken? Some other pictures. This, again, Building 7 is still standing up there. And that's those wheat checks stabbed in the street at 4:52. It was at about 5:22 when Building 7 went away. This is 5:04. There's not much debris on the ground. You know, they're right down at ground level there. And there's that flag at, you can see on this wheat checks back behind that emergency medical vehicle. So I think that pretty clearly shows there wasn't enough stuff on the ground. There's the bathtub wall. That didn't happen. So let's look at the bathtub. You know, Manhattan would have been flooded. First, you know, let's look at what the original shoreline was. And they, you know, very expensive real estate. They want to expand out, so they built the towers in the Hudson River and put, kind of a dike around it. And then later, I expanded even further with the WFC buildings. So you can see the water table's right there, and the towers, the basement of those towers is below the water table, yet it didn't flood. Here's another diagram of the World Trade Center and the bathtub. And here's where this was, the Hudson Terminal opened in 1909. Man, they must have built stuff better back then. This goes under the Hudson up to here, and this is where the station was for the subway, and then it would, go back out. When they built the World Trade Center, they had it turn around within this bathtub, so they didn't have to poke a hole through here. And while they're building it, here's the PATH train coming in, and where it goes through this old station. And you can see the water table right there of the Hudson. And afterwards, he cleaned it out, and it's still there. Now, what's interesting is this meeting with NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. They were meeting to bounce around ideas about what happened to Building 7. They've already gotten out the report of what happened to 1 and 2, with what they want people to believe happened to 1 and 2. Here's Sham Sunder talking about how it couldn't have been some broken pipelines from the towers collapsing on them. And, there's some diesel pipelines apparently that ran underneath here over to Building 7. Building 7's right there, or was right there. And he said, no, it's not seismically significant of an event to cause any damage to the underground. But wait, you have 210-story buildings, each 500,000 tons each, crash to the ground, and it's not seismically significant? Hello?
I thought the seismic data you were going to look at was data associated with the collapse of the tower, particularly 2.
Yes. Oh, yes. We did look. Obviously, we have looked at all of the seismic signals. The main focus of that was to establish the timing of the various events, and if any, again, using it also to see if there were any events that we could not explain other than it being the collapse of the towers and the World Trade Center 7. The signals strength due to the collapse of the towers were not of any magnitude that was seismically significant from an earthquake design standpoint, or from the design or failure of a structural component, or of, I would say, a piping system that might be used in a structure. So there wasn't anything that gave us pause in terms of that being a significant seismic event to have ruptured the pipeline.
It's just totally amazing that these 2 huge buildings slam down and they don't damage pipeline underground. And he doesn't, say that that's weird. And sure enough, this is the original wall where the Hudson was on the other side. Now, adding dirt doesn't make it go above the water table, above sea level. Here's the footprint of Tower 1, right here. And for those who are concerned about the spire, claiming that it fell down into the ground, well, there's no hole in the ground. There's no hole to China or wherever they think it dropped to it. And I've got images from different angles that didn't tip over. So just notice that is pointing out that footprint there. And they left this part under where Building 6 had been to support the wall. But when they took down the remaining fragment of building, they had to use cables, because if they used bombs, like controlled demolition, they were afraid they were damaging the wall. But they're not worried about 500,000 ton buildings. As they pull it with cables.
By mid-December, the Department of Design and Construction had leveled World Trade Center buildings 4 and 5.
Hello? Oh, we're getting ready to pull building 6.
We have to be very careful how we demolish building 6. We were worried about the building 6 coming down and then damaging the slurry wall, so we wanted that particular building to fall within a certain area.
We've got the cables attached in 4 different locations going up, and they'll be pulling the building to the north. It's not every day you try to pull down an 8-story building with cables. I want everybody down to the gate. Thank you. Oh, like 50 feet past that blue truck. I had $1 bet. What? You want to bet $1 and buy 2 shirts? This is standing. Yeah. Okay. I'll take that. I'll take that bet. $1. Okay.
There's a certain excitement in the air of bringing the last structure down at the World Trade Center.
The tough old building. Come on now. It's going to go quick. Yeah. If it goes, it'll go quick. Keep it rocking. It'll go. And when we lost the floor, the more you shake it, the more it starts going into failure. There it goes. There it goes. Good job. Good job. Dan, I'll take my $1 now. It was nice doing business with you.
Because he was betting that it wasn't going to happen. But why would they be pulling it down with cables? They're all worried about, and of course, just a little bit of that framework left, instead of using bombs. Because they're worried about, how much damage they would cause by that. All right, this is the third part of these 3 important ones, the timing issue. That's it. So the horizontal scale is time, and the vertical scale is height. This is height. That's the fastest you can get that top floor on the ground is 9.22 seconds in a vacuum. All right, we'll use that because we're trying to argue, see how fast we can get on the ground. But the problem is, if you talk about this progressive collapse, if the top floor falls, and you got to wait some time before it can trigger the next fall. They don't start at the same time. So, the red floor, we're going to assume 9 out of every 10 floors was gutted out just to overestimate the amount of damage. So, if we start them at the same time, it would land a little bit sooner. But it has to wait its turn. So it causes a delay. And then the next one's the same thing happens. The red one has to wait till it gets the 90th floor before the yellow one gets to move. And then that's 31 seconds. If you do floor by floor, it's 100 seconds. So, all right, so that's 31 seconds. And the first floor is, it takes, the top one. The fastest you can get a bowling ball off the roof and onto the ground in a vacuum is 9.22 seconds. But Houston, we have a problem. The ground only shook for 8 seconds. It went too fast. How could that be? The building was destroyed faster than free fall would explain. It didn't fall to the ground. And what does this tell you? The implications are horrendous with this. So let's work on this. We're going to try to get everything on the ground as fast as we can, which is 9.22 seconds. So let's say we're going to use bombs, and we're going to give all of those floors a head start. So that blue one the red one doesn't have to wait for the blue one to trigger it. We'll go ahead and give the red one a head start. See how, doing this leapfrog takes way too long, waiting for each one to get started. So what we want to do is move all of these back. See, if we put bombs in there and give each of these floors a head start, we can get everything on the ground in 9.22 seconds. But we can't do it faster than that. So that's what bombs, whether you have mini nukes, mini micro nano nukes, thermite, whatever you want to use for controlled demolition, that material, however, needs to end up on the ground in less time than that. So here it is. If you're giving all these floors a head start, you still have that problem. The ground only shook for 8 seconds. This isn't the North Tower. So there wasn't enough time for the stuff to land. Bombs blow chunks. Chunks go flying, and they hit the ground. You saw the seismic chart. There wasn't enough time. So the seismic, it was too fast is one thing. The seismic impact was another. It didn't reflect that material slamming to the ground. As Michael Obers said, I don't remember the sound of a building hitting the ground. Somebody told me it was measured on the Richter scale. I don't know how true that is. If the building's hitting the ground that hard, how do I not remember the sound of it? The building just went away. Well, maybe this is a clue. That part of the building doesn't make a thud when it hits. So if the building was kind of turned to dust, or at least the top part, it's going to float down like snowflakes and isn't going to make a thud when it lands. So we're going to look at seismic signals. You have an earthquake back in January 17th, that same year. So we know that the seismic station can record stuff that travels over those same bedrock. S waves and P waves. And if you remember from things you may have heard before, that looking at the lag between the S wave and the P wave, you can tell how far away the epicenter is, because these two waves travel through the Earth differently. They travel through the Earth. One is a shear wave, the S wave, and the other one's a P wave, pulse wave, primary wave, and they're different, as shown here. The P wave is like you snap a rubber band on something, or you hit a tuning fork with a hammer. And the S wave, it vibrates perpendicular to the line of the wave's travel. And then there's surface waves that don't travel through the Earth. Like when you get up off your mattress in the morning, it recovers, it bounces back. It's not from whacking the mattress. And if you got two 500,000-ton buildings and, King Kong reached over and grabbed them and just tossed them up into space, took that weight off of the ground, that would create a surface wave. Now we can see that that's WTC1, and this is the earthquake that happened earlier that year. The earthquake has S wave, P waves, and surface waves, but WTC1 only has surface waves. The signal did not travel through the Earth. That probably is the most important thing of all of the evidence. If the tuning fork didn't get hit, and it didn't vibrate, what happened to the building? It did not slam to the ground. Whether it was slammed in chunks or as a whole, whatever way you look at it, it didn't slam to the ground. I call this a snout on this one. But the WTC1, when I first saw that, I thought, well, what's that with that? It doesn't have the S wave and P wave in it. And there's a lot of writing here that's in some report, but there's one thing you need to, pay attention to. It said the S waves and P waves are only seen in this is a seismologist saying this, only seen for the earthquake, and they compare it with the gasoline tank over on the other side of the Hudson that also had S wave and P waves when it blew up above ground. And this last bit is the most important. There's hence only a small portion of the potential energy was converted into seismic waves. What they're basically saying, the seismologists are saying, is that very little of the building slammed to the ground. And that's what this looks like. If you had dust coming down, you're not going to get anything impacting the ground, but maybe the surface wave, dampened out in 8 seconds. But we have that problem that we can only get on the ground 9.22 seconds with bombs, at best. But it didn't happen. It did not slam to the ground. And here's the seismic chart. How you read this is all day long. This is WTC2, it just gone, and then you go horizontally across, and that's WTC1, 30 minutes later going. Then you keep going in the various lines. And you can see that there's quarry blasts that were recorded that day, so we knew the seismic chart was working. And then yeah, there's the quarry blast. All these different, tiny things that they're, blasting. And then we have this Fox Islands earthquake, and that's part of the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. But you see that red line just in front of it? That's right when Building 7 went away. There's nothing there of seismic significance that's measured on the scale. A 0.6 on the Richter scale? That's like a bumpity dump truck, bumpity boom down the road. Well, in controlled demolitions, what do you have? Here's Seattle Kingdom, and for comparison, instead of 9.22 seconds, it takes about 4 seconds for that roof to hit the ground in a vacuum, or a ball dropped off that roof. But you can see that the main part of this was, the ground shook for lots longer, a whole lot longer. And here's a blow up of the seismic chart of Building 7. For this fourth one, they couldn't even guess where the surface wave was. The surface waves were shorter than the free fall time, which is 6.4 seconds. But as for when the S wave and P wave should have arrived, they had to calculate when it should have arrived. And you see absolutely no hint of the S wave or P wave at any of those. These are 5 different seismic stations. And so, 6.4 seconds is like 9.22 seconds. And you can see, for the towers, but you can see this is much less than 6.4. So what do we have here? Tower 2 goes first. This is towers 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 7, and then comparing it to the Kingdom. So let's suppose all but the bottom 16 floors of Tower 2 are dustified, and you just drop the bottom 16 floors to the ground. They would make approximately a 2.1. They calculate the Richter scale from the surface wave only. So it'd make about that much the surface wave. And if you dustified all but the bottom 20 floors of the North Tower and drop the bottom 20 floors, you get about the seismic signal that was measured, 2.3. And for Building 7, all but the bottom 2.5 stories get dustified to record approximately the magnitude of the Richter scale reading, which comes from calculating the surface wave strength. So what we see here is the towers didn't burn up, nor they slammed the ground, but turned to dust in midair. You see this, frothing up. And thermal energy can't do that. Kinetic energy can't do that. Something caused the building to turn to dust. So we know that such technology must exist. So that was the main 3 things. If you want to skip to one of the other ones, like the, some people like the thermite or
well, I'd just like to say, Dr. Judy, we are actually running out of time. We've got 5 minutes left, less than 5 minutes left. So
okay, good place to start.
Right, but great caveat to call this to a close. And I just want to say, I'm sorry I haven't said much. I've just been fascinated by the presentation, as I always am when I sit through one of your presentations. So a big thank you for that. You've obviously refined that and brought that out in manageable chunks so that you can explain it to people in ways that they can understand. And kudos to you for doing that. I think that's what is needed, is for people to be able just to look at things broken down into their logical smallest chunks, and then to dissect it with as much common sense as possible.
Right. You need to look at what happened instead of what fits into your model of possibilities.
Yeah.
You know, pattern matching of, you know, answer A goes with number 1, 2, or 3, or, you know, that thing they teach you in school.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'd like to add, just as a, you know, point 16 is about tritium, which we obviously don't have time to cover all of these points, but the key fact that people need to understand, and I mentioned this I think last time I was on with you, is that one of the early prime movers in the alternative story of thermite was Stephen E. Jones, whose earlier field of research was cold fusion, and he actually coined that term with his friend, with his colleague. And so if that's not a red flag for people, that this guy was involved in energy research and then reappears in 2005 in 9/11 research, he is kind of one of the linchpins in connecting the cover-up to the phenomena which actually, you know, explain what actually happened to the towers, or at least partially. So I'd just like to make that point, that anybody who's associated with the Architects and Engineers group or anybody like that, that essentially was a follow-up to what Stephen E. Jones was doing, and he does, I think, know all of this, that this is the correct, you know, set of evidence to be looking at.
Oops. It doesn't, it's hard to find 135. Oops, went past 135. Yeah, steel frame buildings turning to dust. Steel frame buildings with aluminum cladding. They turn to dust, so what's going to be in the dust? Well, you grind up this building and you're going to have, you know, a bunch of dust from it. And so you're going to have part of the steel structure. It, you know, it rusts instantly at the fine level. So you're going to have iron oxide and aluminum cladding. Mix those together, and what do you have? That's what thermite's called. So what a way to divert people from the fact that the building turned to dust.
Yep. That's how it works.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you very much for that. That was very educational and thought-provoking as always. And thank you for joining us here on Conscious Consumer Network. We'd love to have you both back to chat to us again. And I'm sure there's much more you've got to show us, Dr. Judy. I'm sorry we've not had time to continue on.
And poor Andrew is sitting there watching.
Oh, that's okay. No, I never sit around. I'm always doing things.
Oh, Andrew, thank you so much. You're always a very balancing measure with regards to this information, so we always appreciate your perspective and input. And on that note, I'm just going to say thank you to everybody who has tuned in. It's been great to be with you all, and really an honor and a privilege to get to sit through this amazing bundle of information. Hope that we've given you some amazing tools for you guys to be more discerning in how you approach information. And yeah, as always, we are here to show you as much as we can and provide all various perspectives on different things. And thank you to Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson for joining us. It's been great to have you guys with us.
Thank you. And you can find our websites, checktheevidence.com, drjudywood.com, and wheredidthetowers.go.com. You know, you can go from there and get more on all of this stuff and more.
Lovely. Thank you very much. It's been great being with you.
Thank you very much for spending the time.
Thank you for tuning into CCN. This unique network is dedicated to free and independent media. CCN was created with the belief that information is the common heritage of all beings, which is why our live stream high-definition broadcast is easily accessible and free to view. If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Having produced over 1,000 shows in 2015, which are all archived on YouTube, we look forward to bringing you more groundbreaking, cutting-edge information in 2016. For more information on what is on, please check out our broadcast guide for weekly updates. CCN broadcasts in multiple languages and features some key voices of our challenging times who are all in pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world. CCN belongs to you, the people, and it is up to you all to keep this network on the air. Please contribute to the Network Support Fund or visit the CCN shop. We thank you all for supporting free and independent media.